Okay, everyone. This is going to be a continuation of our series on circumcision myths, and we're going to look at the healthwise myths today. I think it's becoming clear that the myth you read on the left side of the page is becoming much more certain, where Paul says, "Beware the dogs, beware those who practice mutilation." Philippians 3:2. No, it does seem to be overwhelmingly clear that it is a good medical procedure for adults and children according to the science. But your decision as a parent or as an individual male, it's up to you to make those decisions for yourself or your child. The topics today will be penile cancer in the UK, penile cancer generally, and circumcision, and the cost and the procedure. But I'm going to start with, what about Candace's claim that penile cancer is higher for the circumcised? And again, this is her quote there. First, I think it would. She's talking about what you should ask your doctor who's telling you that you maybe should get it. Ask your doctor. First up, I think I would ask them then, can you explain why European countries which do not default to circumcising their male infants have lower rates of penile cancer and infections? All right. So that's what she said. And I said I couldn't prove it through my research last time. Still, again, I tried doing more research today. Still didn't find it. In fact, I found overwhelming evidence to the contrary. But I think I know what's wrong with her statement. I want to play it for you, and then I'll explain to you a little bit.
Nowhere else in the world outside of Muslim North African countries or Israel are they just circumcising every boy as a standard as soon as they are born. Canada, I thought for sure, Canada, yeah, they must be like us. Nope, just 31%, and it's going downward in terms of a trend. In Mexico, it is 15%. In Sweden, it's just 5%. Across the entire European continent, there is no country that comes even close to breaking 25%, and no country at least that does not also have a majority Islamic population. Are you shocked by that? Either I have just been completely in the dark, which I probably maybe have been, but if you're not a person that travels a lot, or even if you do travel a lot, it's not like you're going, hey, are you circumcised? By the way, just checking here. Love the food here. Do you circumcise your sons? It's just not something that we know, because it's just something that we are told everybody is supposed to do. Let's get into some questions that you can ask your doctors and your nurses regarding circumcision. Here are just some questions that I would ask. First up, I think it would be fair to say, what are the benefits of male circumcision? I would ask them then, can you explain why European countries which do not default to circumcising their male infants have lower rates of penile cancer and infections? I would then ask them, could circumcision be a contributing factor to hemorrhagic disease in newborns, given that male infants suffer more predominantly from it with a 2-to-1 ratio, with a 2.1-to-1 ratio rather. I would ask them, don't vitamin K levels naturally rise after the first few days? And if they say, yeah, they do rise, I would ask them, then why the rush? If you do feel, by the way, that you do want to circumcise your child with the knowledge that I just gave you, with the facts that I just presented to you, why not wait a couple of days?
All right. So I included the first clip to show you that she's looking at incidences or percentages of foreign European countries that use circumcision as a default. And apparently it's very few do that. And that means the rates are much lower than in countries like the United States, where it is or has been over a long period of time the default standard. And since 2012, that would be the default recommendation of your medical doctor, according to the American Pediatric Association. So I have a theory of what's going on in her. And by the way, again, I wonder, are they doing the circumcisions on day one? That seems pretty unusual. Or are they waiting a couple of days? The Bible talks about 8 days. So why wouldn't we recommend 8 days when we think, I know science doesn't acknowledge God knows anything, but I think if anything, the circumcision evidence proves that he did know something about something you wouldn't otherwise know, that circumcision is good for human health of males. But anyway, so I think it should be 8 days. If I were a parent, I wouldn't allow it to be done any sooner than 8 days because of the Bible, because of a religious belief, and tell the doctor that. But I'll come back with a kid and that kind of thing. And she's right. What's the rush if you're a male adult? uh, get informed first that this is a operation you feel is worth the risk. Anyway, I just want you to look at the statement. First, I think I would ask them then, can you explain why European countries which do not default to circumcising their male infants have lower rates of penile cancer and infections? So you saw that almost no European country in her example defaults to male circumcision, right? So what country, like there may be one country that defaults, and maybe that one country itself, maybe it has low hygiene, and maybe it doesn't give us a real evidence of what the role of circumcision or not circumcision is in the penile cancer in that particular country. So this is what I call loose correlation, and I didn't really, I read it and you jump to conclusions that there's some causal connection. She's not saying anybody found a causal connection between either circumcision and getting more penile infection. Simply, it was if the country's legal policy defaults to recommending it, is that country less likely to have or more likely to have penile cancer? And apparently in Europe, which has virtually nobody who defaults to it, must have one country or something that does default to it. And that country's rate of incidence is what a study she heard about looks like. So I'm pretty certain, in light of the evidence I'm going to show you today, that may be the explanation of how she could be right. But this is not a basis to conclude something is causally caused. Penile cancer is caused or contributed to by having actual circumcision. So the bottom line is the fact one country defaults to circumcision and the other doesn't isn't the determinative factor of whether you are going to get penile cancer or not. It turns out the evidence is that circumcision is a factor, and it's in the negative, meaning it reduces it substantially penile cancer. So that's something I'm confident she didn't know that, and she did the best she could to provide evidence. But I think that's the explanation. But I'm going to keep looking. Maybe there's something I missed. So this is just episode 2. All right, and this is what you find if you typed in the search penile cancer related to circumcision, and this is the first thing that came up. This is from Exxon Publications, and they do medical publications, PKP. The European Urology Guidelines. Europe is what she was talking about, right? Guidelines support this evidence, stating, quote, neonatal circumcision reduces the incidence of penile cancer, not increases it, reduces it. This is the European Urology Guidelines say that. However, it does not seem to reduce the risk of penile intraepithelial neoplasia, which is not the incident. That's not what I'm looking at. I'm trying to find out what increases or decreases penile cancer, and the evidence and look at the date, September 9, 2022. So that's why I feel very confident that either her evidence is old or the question the evidence she's talking about is what I call a weak correlation between countries that mandate or a default to recommending it and their incidences of getting penile cancer are related. Somebody related that to who has the default rate or not, rather than to examine people, did you have circumcision or not, and then determine the ratio of those people who get more penile cancer or less penile cancer. And that the evidence is overwhelming here. As of 2022, the European Urology Guidelines definitely reject what Candace Owen is saying as of that date. And of course, that's just only about less than a year ago. I also came across this is from the National Institute of Health, I believe. Yes. So, and this is from 2017, just a little blurb here. So with Google now, it gives you these AI results, which they extract out the answer to whatever question you pose, which I think is very helpful, speeds things up. And just look at what it says right here. Male neonatal circumcision has been associated with a dramatic decrease in penile cancer rates with countries such as Israel, such and such and such. I mean, I didn't even open up the clip. I mean, to me, this is now the first one was the only one I needed to see. And I'm like, okay, that answers her statement. But this is dramatic decrease in penile cancer. 2017 National Institute of Health. Then I wanted to go dig a little deeper back into Europe and see if there's some exceptions. Maybe what countries are we talking about? And I think the UK doesn't default anymore, but it used to default. So maybe this is the one country that she had. If I could find the country that she's saying that they default to it, and they have a higher incidence of penile cancer, I would find it likely in the UK. But this is what I find out. This is the Cancer Research UK, uncircumcised men, and if you read there, the second where it starts here, uncircumcised men may sometimes find it difficult, said so and so, such and such. It's called phimosis. Men with phimosis have a higher risk of penile cancer than other men. So that would say no, even there in the UK, you're going to have less penile cancer if you have circumcision. All right. Then I found this article that talked about worldwide statistics. So that might help give an answer to the same question that Candace Owens was addressing. And well, this is what I found out. Profile patients with penile cancer in the region with the highest worldwide incidence. So this is examining particularly the country of Brazil. Okay. But in that, they tell you about the general statistics about penile cancer in the world. And this is what they say. The etiology of penile carcinoma remains unknown, and its mechanisms of development have not been completely elucidated. Then they have all these things: phimosis, melanoma, smegma, precarious genital hygiene, smoking, history of STIs, human papillomavirus infection. Are the main risk factors, and circumcision is an important protective factor. So it cites footnotes 6, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I found only 7 and 8 are related to circumcision, these two. So just reading the headlines, I'm not going to read the articles myself, but if you want, this is where you could do some more research. And I give you the Nature articles. So what we're looking at is the Nature article, which is a top science magazine in the United States and Europe, actually. And the first article is entitled Albero G. Male circumcision and prevalence of genital human papillomavirus infection in men, a multinational study, 2013. The second one is very interesting. Morris B. The strong protective effect of circumcision against cancer of the penis. There it is. Strong protective effect. The ADV, I'm not sure what that stands for, Urology, 2011. So the evidence seems to be overwhelming that it's not just some protective effect, but a highly protective effect against penile cancer. So, okay, I'm done with that. Now, I found something when doing my research, trying to go over that issue and find more evidence. And I found this commercial webpage by a doctor who does circumcisions. And so I wouldn't put any particular weight on it, but he had said the same thing here. And that was what made me begin, thinking, well, maybe she's wrong. I thought maybe she was right the whole time because I couldn't find much in the prior research. So here's what it said. Penile cancer, although rare, penile cancer is less common in a circumcised person. So there you go. But what's interesting is I thought, let me look at this doctor takes in patients. He's in Los Angeles, Silver Lake. And I thought, well, maybe I could find out what it costs. And people out there don't know. Now, again, I was born in New York City at the time period when it was a default and everybody was getting, nobody could get around it. So my parents had it done in the hospital. And so that's it's not my issue, but maybe some of you it is, and I'm trying to help you here get some more information. So here's what the Silver Lake Center claims, and it has the thing here on adult circumcision. And I just thought it'd be interesting that you hear what their opinion is. And again, they're self-interested in promoting it, so you got to go do your own research to verify, test and verify. I want to show you what he says in the bottom two items there of adult circumcisions is the benefits. He says penile cancer, although rare, penile cancer is less common in a circumcised person. And then next, in sexually transmitted diseases, the risks for genital ulcers, chlamydia, human papillomavirus, syphilis, and type 2 herpes have been shown to be lower in men who have been circumcised. And then he also goes on and says HIV transmission. Several international studies show that circumcision lowers the risk of HIV transmission, which is basically deadly. I mean, we're talking a lot of the other things are just, irritants and infections and all that, and they can go away over time. But death is a serious issue. So you could save your child's life if they had a partner who happened to be with someone who had HIV, and then he or she can contract what the disease is, and that's a deadly disease. And of course, they've have modern management, but you never know. So I just wouldn't. That's another reason why, when death is on the other side, and almost a very difficult thing to escape, I think that raises the bar, if you will, to me, to make sure you do this, and just in case. The U.S. Centers of Disease Control and Prevention recommend that men consider circumcision as an additional measure along with safe sex to prevent HIV. Oh, and so in the Silver Lake Center, it actually mentioned circumcision takes a half an hour to perform. Thought that might help people. And also, then he goes through what you need to know about circumcision, what will happen during the procedure. There's a numbing shot. Sometimes it's necessary due to anesthesia. It will be closed by stitches, just so you understand, but they're self dissolving. And I also was he puts right on his webpage, August special just this month, $790. So again, it's not a fortune, it's not cheap, but it's not an arm and a leg. And even though it involves a medical procedure where you'll be numbed, or you could even have anesthesia, which I'm sure the cost will go up, in either instance, it's something that can be done in an outpatient at a doctor's office instead of in a hospital, where, of course, costs are usually enormous. By the way, I want to make clear, I have no connection to this doctor. I don't even know his name. I don't know the incidence of any problems he's ever had or not. I'm not recommending this clinic. I'm just saying this is a website I found by a doctor who does this. And I thought it might be useful for people to know about the procedure, how long it takes, and a cost. One doctor in the world charges in Los Angeles, which, by the way, is one of the highest priced states in the country for anything. So probably in your own state, you would find something much less expensive, I would assume. Okay, so let's review what we found out today. The issues of penile cancer in the UK and worldwide are overwhelmingly and strongly in favor of penile cancer being much less prevalent in anyone who circumcised either as a child or as an adult. We also learned that it is a half-hour procedure. It's done outpatient. Obviously, basically, you go into the office, you are numbed, or in certain cases, obviously, anesthesia, and you will then have the procedure done. And the recovery is about 2 weeks. So it seems to be similar to other types of cosmetic surgery, and therefore, because it has a strong protective benefit. The fact that somebody could ever say it was mutilation is someone who did not know the heart of God, did not know that God just didn't say this, I want you to mutilate your body just for your own, for my sake, for my pleasure. He was doing it for our safety. And obviously now I see in hindsight, he was so that the nations, although wouldn't be mandated, except in two instances, to come into his temple or to eat at the food with the Jewish people in their homes, you had to be circumcised. Of course, also, if you were a servant in a house of Jewish people, you'd have to be circumcised, but that's a very infrequent issue. And so God knew best, and now we know why, because the way he designed the human body, this particular piece of flesh would be, if removed, would make you healthier. And wouldn't that be only the creator who made you who would know that? So I actually think this is proving that God is our creator. Because how would he know this? How would anyone know this? Because they didn't have statistical tables back in, you know, 1250, 1500 BC when this is first asked of Abraham. And so I think that just vindicates God once more, and shows once more that anybody who calls it mutilation didn't know what he was talking about. All right. God bless everybody. Take care. Ciao. Bye.